Governor for Sepik.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Speaker, and may I say to the House that it is always an honor to listen to Sir Jay speak, and I will always be happy to give up my space for him in recognition of the fact that he is the last man standing. And he speaks on an issue that is very close to my heart too, and I want to endorse those comments. My grievance today, Mr. Acting Speaker, is in relation to the economy and particularly in what is happening in the US, in some of their medium-sized banks. We note last week the folding of the Silicon Valley Bank, which funds organizations like Facebook and a lot of these tech companies, and it has gone bust lately. One of the big 30 banks, Credit Suisse in Europe, it's one of their biggest banks. It's also in trouble. And there are many banks who are indicating that they could be in trouble in the coming months. The world could be facing, Mr. Acting Speaker, another financial meltdown similar to 1997. And this is being brought about, as we know, by the prolonged pandemic that the entire world faced in COVID, which forced a lot of governments to borrow, including ours. And the central banks around the world began to tighten interest rates in order to control inflation. And I noticed in Papua New Guinea in the last few months, there's been a lot of concern by the public on the issue of inflation, and many Papua New Guineans don't understand why we are facing inflation in Papua New Guinea, and we somehow feel that what's happening in the other parts of the world should not impact us. But I wanted to say here in the House that whilst we are concerned with DSIP and fixing things in our district and fixing things in our province, we should have a mechanism that recognizes what is happening in the other parts of the world that affect us. Many of us still deny that COVID-19 was real, and we forget that China is only now reducing its tight control on COVID-19. It's only done so in the last couple of months. And China is the largest country on earth, and it continued to take COVID-19 seriously. Also in Papua New Guinea, I noticed that the central bank has not tightened interest rates compared to other central banks. And so the impact on our banks by the central bank is perhaps not so significant as we see in other parts of the world. And just to give everyone an indication of the size of the problem, Credit Suisse will be requiring more than $50 billion cash injection from the central bank in its country to keep operating. That's how significant it is. And if other banks follow suit, a lot of our programs could also be in trouble because we are borrowing from the world and we have significant debt. I'm worried about the knock-on effects. And just to give the House a further understanding of what's happening, as a result of COVID, as a result of the Ukraine-Russian war, fertilizer prices have increased 110% across the world. The two crops that rely heavily on fertilizer are rice and wheat. You will notice that this year, the price of rice and the price of wheat globally has increased by 20%. Last year, some wheat producers increased prices by up to 160%. Now, I don't believe we should continue to bury our head in the sand and pretend that what's happening in the global economy will not affect us, Mr. Acting Speaker. My view is that we should be doing more locally. We should be increasing local production so that we can offset some of these things that are happening globally. Now, our people in the towns and cities will feel this impact. And this is why I've been asking a lot of questions about power. The cost of power feeds into the general cost that everybody needs to pay. And as we wait for interventions to happen, and this is where I personally don't want to continue to blame the former PNC government. I think that's an old story and we shouldn't continue to do that. Whatever has happened back then, something before. We should really be taking ownership of the issues now. On the issue of jobs, again, important for the economy, we just don't have the jobs, and we know that. And I recall when I was sitting in the opposition and the then opposition leader, Patrick Pruitt, he made a presentation on this floor where the numbers that he got from the central bank showed a decline of 100,000 jobs. And this happened during the PNC time. Fast forward to today, we still don't know what we're doing in terms of jobs. We've got all these really nice programs. Every district is humming. You've got district programs happening. You've got road programs happening. You've got all these things happening. But we don't know how it's feeding into the economy. We have no idea. Because our statistics is not working. So all the time we are making guesses and we're throwing mud at each other, but the underlying problem still remains. We have more than 70,000 young people finishing school every year. Are we creating 70,000 jobs every year? We know the simple answer is no. If you look at the presentation by the Treasurer, out of the 24 billion kina budget, only 900 million is being targeted at the economy. Now, I don't want to complain about that because that's how we've always treated the economy. If you look at every single budget, the economy gets a very small proportion of the national budget in terms of everything we want to pay for. Education and health get over 40% of the budget. And if you look at all of our admin costs and salaries and everything else, it leaves very little for the economy. And without the economy, we are going to sit back and worry about how are we going to keep the rice prices low? How are we going to keep the wheat prices low? And if people haven't already figured it out, palm oil prices are going up. So the cooking oil prices in the shops are going to go up too. So in essence, the entire basket of basic goods that our people want to use, particularly those in towns and cities, rice, flour, cooking oil, the prices are going to keep going up. We need some kind of intervention, perhaps from Parliament. I'm not sure if we have an economic committee. If there is, perhaps it's time to activate it. We need to be talking to our industries. We need to be talking to those that are supplying power. We need to start bringing the entire cost structure of doing business down. We've got to make our economy more competitive so it grows. Whilst we are intervening in the SME space with concessional funding and this and that, it's actually just a drop in the ocean. It's not making a difference. It might be making a difference to one or two families, but it's not making a difference to the wider community. So my grievance debate is that I'd like to see someone take ownership of it. I know the Treasurer cops a lot of the flack for it, but what people don't realize is that the Treasurer's job is just to bring in the money. He doesn't spend the money. The spending actually takes place in other agencies. Treasurer and paini money the sol na karem kam, or narlaman by spending money. So as a member of this government, I'd like to see some of the portfolio ministers in terms of the money you are getting from Treasury and you are using in your departments. How are you contributing to alleviating some of these problems? We need to see that on this floor. And we need to be debating those issues. It's rather unfair that we target the Treasurer all the time. Now, work blame lokari monitor solikam. Work blow spending and blow narrow line. So just to get some clarity and then to sort of bring us back to recognize that my biggest fear is the knock-on effects from the banks. Suppose plenty of bank lo Europe na America start lo collapse, now banks lo Asia too start lo collapse. Bibla bag simbagrab. And mibla by sinam ta sol na, mibla ek to sa mibla bisilo, DSIP na, PSIP na, building road na, bridge na, classroom na. Something outside by affecting mibla. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's my grievance debate for this afternoon. Thank you.